So we're presenting today an AllegroGraph component that is a plugin for Talend Open Studio that will allow for integration of n-triple formatted output into AllegroGraph database. So I'm going to show the component itself. We're assuming that the actual knowledge of Talend and how to create jobs has been already acquired, and someone is familiar with the Talend Open Studio environment. So I'm going to jump straight into the job design. So we're going to create a sample job, and in that job we're going to integrate a relational database. We're going to pull the information out of the relational database, format it into n-triples, and then using the AllegroGraph component we're going to integrate it with the AllegroGraph database. So I'm going to just create a brand new job. So this is a new Talend job that we'll use for integration with AllegroGraph. So I'm going to just pull some data. I have a pre-built database with employees, and I'm just going to pull in one of the databases. There's an employees database. I'm going to use that as our input to the flow. And the employee database it's a sample database that's provided with MySQL. It's a very simple schema. This is for demonstration purposes, just so we can see how to acquire data in a relational format and then convert that into triples and insert that into AllegroGraph. So I'm integrating with this relational database. I'm just going to, for display purposes, show you what's inside of this database. So we're going to output it into a log file. And I'm going to grab only 100 rows from that database. This database has quite a few thousands rows, so we're going to limit it to just 100 for demonstration purposes. And I'm going to run this. So this is going to show us what's inside of this employee database. And here's the output. This employee database of the 100 first rows of the database. There's an employee ID, date of birth, first name, last name, and other information for an employee. So what we're really interested in is how to convert this information, which is stored in a relational format, into a triple. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a map component that's available in Talend Open Studio to convert this information using an AllegroGraph plugin to convert that information into an n-triple formatted output. So I'm going to go to a processing tab and grab our map component, and we're going to take that and output this information so you can see it before and after. I'm going to input that into the map. So right now we see we have this input of this employee database, this employee table, and we're going to output that as an n-triple formatted string. So I'm going to name this output n-triple, and I'm just going to get it started with just this employee number. So really what we're after is an output that's a string, and it's formatted as an n-triple. So we have a AllegroGraph component that will convert any input into an n-triple. So we're going to use this component. It's available under categories AllegroGraph, and the function is called toN-triple. And what this function is expecting is base URI, a subject, predicate, and a value. So for each one of those values, we're going to provide a piece of information from a relational database. We're going to change the base just in a second. We're going to provide it from an outside input. But really what we're after is the subject here, which is our employee. So we would like to replace that with our employee number. So I'm just going to drag this field here. So now we have a base URI, we have a subject, which is the employee number. Our predicate in this case is going to be a last name, and we want to provide a value for this triple. So we're going to grab a last name from here and replace this with the last name. So this function gives us a triple. The input to it is a base URI, subject of an employee number, the predicate, in our case it's a last name, and the actual value from the relation database from a column called last name. So I'm going to save this, apply, and again we're going to preview what's being outputted out of this map. So again, our familiar logger, and we want to see what's coming out in n-triple format. So as I run this right now, what we're doing is we're reading from a relational database, we're displaying the output, then we're formatting that information using the mapping component into n-triples, and again we're outputting it to a log file. So I'm going to start this job again. And here's our output. So we can see now the output being mixed in. Here's a raw data from a database, just as it comes out. And what we're doing is we're converting it into an n-triple formatted string. In our case, we have a base URI of mycorp.com/base, and we're using an employee number to identify this particular subject. Our predicate is last name, and the value is right here at the end. And we're outputting 100 records. And now what we can do with this information, we can use the AllegroGraph component that actually inserts this information into AllegroGraph database. So again, we're going to add this component at the end of our flow. Here's our new AllegroGraph component. That component is available under databases AllegroGraph. In this case, we're using the n-triple output. It's expecting an n-triple formatted input, and it persists this data in AllegroGraph. This component requires configuration. It requires the same configuration as your database would. It needs a connection string, the URL for the server, the user ID and password, and catalog ID. So I have a locally running AllegroGraph database, and I'm going to input this information. So this database is running on a default port of 10,035. I am using the out-of-the-box default user ID and password. And I would like to use the root catalog. I have created a repository called Talend Demo. And this repository is a brand new, I just created it. It has no triples inside of it. I'm going to create a base URI for our data. And just to display real quickly, this Talend Demo repository, I'm going to switch to my instance and show you the web interface for AllegroGraph. And here's our Talend Demo repository, which right now has 0 triples. So what we would like to do is now populate this repository with our relationally acquired data. So again, we're taking data from employees table, converting it using our map component, and the map component is utilizing the AllegroGraph function to convert string data into a triple, and then we're utilizing our AllegroGraph output component to insert that into a database. So we're going to connect these two to close the loop and execute this job. And now what you can see is the AllegroGraph n-triple output component is giving us information about the connection size and how many records it's operating on. And it displays that it has worked on 100 connections. Has worked on 100 statements. So now if we go back to our AllegroGraph web view, we should see that this Talend Demo has 100 triples in it. There are the 100 statements. And we can actually start taking a look at those statements to our graph viewer. And here are all of our triples. again, at this point, we have very simple information. We have the employee ID as a subject, and we have the last name as the value for a predicate last name. And building on top of this example, now we can start adding other information relevant to this particular table. So I'm going to switch back into our Talend environment. Now we can start combining this information across multiple tables, across multiple columns. So in this case, we have started with just the last name. So let's add the first name as well to this. So what we can do is we can create another triple. And this triple, again, is going to have the same information for a subject. It's the same employee number. But now, instead of the last name, we're going to use first name. So again, we're going to use our AllegroGraph 2N triple component. We'll leave the same base URI, and we'll use, in this case, we're using employee number as a subject. We're going to change this to a first name. So our predicate now is a first name, and the value itself is going to come from a column called first_name. And so now we have another triple that we're building. This one is for a first name. And again, in the same format, what we can do is we can visualize that information. We can take a look at the output from this map. So we can look at the first name here. I'm going to disable this output here just so this doesn't run, so we can visualize what's happening with the second triple. Just have to change the type. What we would like to output from this map is a string instead of an int. I'm going to synchronize the columns, and we're ready to go. Okay. And if we take a look at our new output, now we're creating a triple with a predicate for the same employee with a predicate of first name, and here's the value coming from the column first_name.